Welcome to 5 Points Blues presentation of Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. Here are your hosts, Nikki Harrison and Christy Scales.
Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. I'm Nikki Harrison here with Christy Scales, and joining us today, this fine Tuesday, Bryan Broaddus. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me. It's nice to be back with you guys.
Yes, always lovely having you with us.
Thank you.
So, lots have happened. We're in free agency. Catch us up on personnel changes, comings and goings.
Yeah, because 5 Points Blue, we were on our spring break last week when the calendar year opened for the NFL officially and free agency began. But we've had some comings and goings personnel-wise. But specifically today at the Star, and I know you were talking about this a little bit earlier, but for our 5 Points Blue audience, we've got Eric Berry, who's a perennial Pro Bowl safety that's in the house, and also Robert Quinn is visiting today.
Yeah, and it's and with Eric Berry, it's a unique situation. Eric Berry is the safety's version of Sean Lee, if I could kind of talk about that. An outstanding player when he's on the field, but often injured, often hurt. So was able to play in the NFC Championship game, the AFC Championship game last year. Played 90-something plays, but he's had trouble staying healthy. He had a heel injury, has battled cancer, survived that. I mean, there's a lot of things when you bring Eric Berry into your organization and talking to people in the front office. It's going to be a full medical check. And, a lot of times you'll kind of bring guys in and kind of, okay, do this, do that, but kind of go through their history. But Eric Berry, if you're interested in signing Eric Berry, then you're going to have to, again, really dig into him, the medical-wise. But my best description of Eric Berry, like I said, is he's Sean Lee with the great play on the field, but then you worry about missing the 5, 6, 7 games that you might get during a season.
Mm-hmm. Well, safety is a position that has been discussed as a upgrade target this offseason, and the Cowboys lost out on Earl Thomas.
They did.
Who signed a bigger deal, got blown away with a big deal to sign with the Ravens.
Didn't see that coming.
The Chiefs they paid a lot of money, got a lot of guaranteed money up front. And how does the style of play of Eric Berry differ from Earl Thomas? What would Berry bring that they don't currently have right now?
I think with Berry, and Thomas is more comfortable in this scheme the Cowboys play, which they like to describe as a single high safety, which means the safety is going to play in the middle of the field between the two hash marks. And so when you play single high safety, that means you take your other safety and play him in run support. So it means what they say down in the box. When we talk about the box, it's from tackle to tackle. That's the box area. And then you count the number of guys in the box. So Jeff Heath, for example, last year was really our box safety for the Cowboys. When Rod Marinelli and Chris Richard wanted to get an extra defender to play against the run, they would walk Jeff Heath down there to play with the linebackers.
Because he's a more physical kind of guy.
Player,
rather than playing center field.
Right, yeah.
It's like moving down and getting closer to the action and involved in more tackling.
Right. Eric Berry is more of a center fielder than he is a box player. Now, if that's the case, then you use Eric Berry as that guy who could play back. You talk about Woods playing back. Now you got Heath, and then Frazier that you could play down as well. So the bigger the body, the more physical the body, the more likely to play down. The more slimmer, sleeker movement guys tend to play in the back. Thomas could play either, but he could play best down. They lost out on that. Now they got a guy that can play back. So we'll see how that plays.
I'm going to take it away from the Cowboys just for a quick second. You said that you were shocked to see the Earl Thomas signing.
Yeah.
How surprised were you guys with the Odell Beckham Jr. news? Do you still get surprised?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was some sideline and off-field stuff where, I think that Giants ownership and GM were getting kind of tired of that act.
Okay.
But I don't know that anybody really saw Cleveland pulling off that kind of deal to obtain OBJ.
Well, John Dorsey,
who's the general manager for Cleveland now.
Yeah, John Dorsey and I worked together in Green Bay for 5 years. I know John very well. the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs are the way they are with their rosters. Matter of fact, he was the one that orchestrated the Pat Mahomes trade to go up. So John, and then last year, he drafts Baker Mayfield. John's about football. John is about getting. John can deal with personalities. He's also dealt with guys that are a little bit 1 foot on the other side of the line as far as maybe some off the field character stuff. There's teams like that will be very very mindful of character stuff. John, not so much. John's about playing football. I know Dave Gettleman, the general manager from the New York Giants. Dave, when he had the opportunity, the only mistake I think Dave made in this trade for Odell Beckham, or the trade of Odell Beckham, is that he gave Odell Beckham a ton of money before he signed. He gave him a huge contract.
$98 million.
Yeah, huge contract. Wow. So now he's got dead money on his cap that he's having to deal with, but it's between $15, $16 million a year now that he's going to have to deal with. So not surprising that Dorsey pulled the deal. Not surprising that Dave Gettleman made the trade, because Gettleman is trying to make the Giants in his image, not the previous regime's image. So a lot of times players will struggle with that. The reason why a guy like Robert Quinn is here today is because Robert Quinn went from at the Rams, he was a 4-3 defensive end. Then Wade Phillips came in a 3-4 with the 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers. And so now Robert Quinn gets squeezed out. He's a put his hand on the ground and rush guy. Okay. And so he gets traded to Miami. Well, what's happened to him in Miami? Miami's doing the same thing. Miami's making a scheme change. Yeah. So now all of a sudden, the thing with Beckham, sometimes it happens that you get a new general manager, get a new coach, you want to change in the locker room. I think that's really what happened there.
It's all about finding the right fit, Nikki, right? Yeah. It's just like some people, and it's not just football. I mean, think of your friends and family and different career fields, and some people are better suited with some companies than others. Some would be the old IBM types, and the others are more Google, right? Yeah. So, and a lot of times the teams take on the personalities, not just of the general managers, but of the ownership. So when you have the Rooneys, some of the old traditional families and ownership, the Rooneys in Pittsburgh and the Maras in New York, and sometimes it's just different corporate cultures and team cultures. And so
you have to be real careful with that, though. As much as the culture, how important it is to your team, though, you have to be careful of just going completely in one different direction. And I think with the Giants, with Dave Gettleman, Dave has been with the Giants. He was with the Giants for a long time. Got a job with Carolina, got let go at Carolina. Carolina's got a pretty good team, a team he built. And so now back with the Giants. So, again, the Giants have a way of doing things. Christy's right. The Maras, the Rooneys, they have a certain way of doing business and the way they understand their culture. So, again, you have to be real careful about. Now, I'm really interested in what happens at Cleveland with Odell, because that's a first-year head coach. It's a first-time head coach.
Freddie Kitchens, who spent a short time here with the Cowboys.
Right, and that's a
tight ends coach here.
Yeah, first-year head coach, first-time head coach, and now the expectations of the Cleveland Browns are here. And where at one time the Cleveland Browns' expectations were here,
for sure.
And now you have a player who is very volatile at times, and so we'll see how this new head coach handles that situation.
Mm-hmm. Quick question: how does the player themselves factor into it? I mean, do they have? I'm assuming they have no say in where they go.
Yes and no. So Robert Quinn, who is visiting today, again, this is a defensive end and would be a very good pass rusher to add to the Cowboys. And like Bryan said, getting kind of squeezed out with the new coaching changes and defensive scheme there
Brian
in Miami.
Flores there in Miami. Yeah,
he was the defensive coach for Bill Belichick up in New England with the Patriots, and is now taken over as the head coach in Miami. So Quinn is currently under contract to the Miami Dolphins. So he's visiting here. It would have to be a trade between the Cowboys and the Dolphins. But Quinn, who is due $12 million this year. Here's the thing. Would he be willing to renegotiate a contract? Does he want to? Is he going to want an extension? So there are certain things that he's going to want on his contract or have expectations for as to whether he would be happy here or not. And so in some ways, is it between the Dolphins and the Cowboys to make the trade? Yes, but the intentions of what the expectation is for the player long term are certainly factors.
Can I put you guys on the spot? Would you trade DeMarcus Lawrence?
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't, but I'd want to see what the deal is.
Okay, would you trade him if you signed Robert Quinn, knowing you had a legitimate
It would
passer?
make it easier.
Yeah.
It would make it easier to trade him.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to set yourself up for the fact that you don't have DeMarcus Lawrence signed yet. You have him under a franchise tag.
Right.
He doesn't have to play under it. Le'Veon Bell,
Right.
this former Steelers running back who worked out the deal in this just last week to join the Jets, he didn't play on it last year.
Didn't play the whole season.
Right.
Yeah. So, see, that's what I'm saying. If you have an agent that you cannot deal with, that is not going to be reasonable, then if you get Robert Quinn, that gives you flexibility. Right now, DeMarcus, I think, holds a lot of cards here.
Yes, he does.
And so, but where you can kind of pull one of those cards back is if you go and get a legitimate pass rusher. Robert Quinn is a legitimate NFL pass rusher that could get you between 8 to 10 sacks a year. So if, with that being said, you could play him at right defensive end. You could move Crawford back to the left side. You've got Armstrong. You've got Taco. You've got guys that can play as that left defensive end. As long as you had somebody that legitimately can rush the passer, then you can think about this. Now, again, we're not advocating trading him. I'm not sitting here advocating. But I also will say this for the front office. I'm a little disappointed in the approach. We draft, we develop, we sign. I'm a little disappointed right now. Okay, now maybe
that's not what they're doing.
They haven't signed. They haven't gotten it done yet.
They haven't gotten it done. Now,
and the longer you wait, the higher the cost goes. This should have been done last year.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think to me, this is where if you're going to be a team that your approach, if you're telling me in free agency I'm not going to be a player, I'm not going to jump into the pool the first week of the season, then okay, what am I going to do? Well, my approach is I draft, I develop, and then I sign. You've done that with some of your offensive linemen here. You have done that. You did it with Des Bryant. You didn't draft Tony Romo, but you got Tony Romo through the draft. I mean, you signed him as an undrafted.
Did it with Sean Lee.
Sean Lee, exactly. You're extended.
Trying to do it with Byron Jones.
Exactly. So if in fact this agent, and I'm sounding like I'm putting it all on the agent, but if the agent is being unrealistic, if he's being unrealistic in his demands of you as a front office that you in fact cannot make this deal and make him happy, then I think you have to explore all opportunities to say, okay, this is what we will take for DeMarcus Lawrence in return. Again, it's not the most ideal situation because I don't think your team is better, but I think that it allows you the flexibility to say, okay, we've got other guys that we have to sign. We have Byron Jones we have to sign. You have Dak Prescott we have to sign. Ezekiel Elliott we have to sign.
Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper you have to re-sign. So
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot. See, that's one of the good things about drafting and developing, if you can do it. Some teams are not very good at this. At the Cowboys, it's actually a good problem to have.
Yes.
If you're doing that the right way. But again, I feel like, though, there's going to be a point in time where if you do get Quinn, that gives you a little bit of flexibility to say, okay, if 40 days here before we get to the NFL draft, we're going to move on because we just don't think this is going to be done. And the fact that he has a shoulder surgery looming, he could play that card too. He could say, okay, I'll sign right before training camp, and then the shoulder surgery carries him into the season. Now you're playing in October.
Wow.
And then you get nothing for him as he walks out the door.
Yeah. There are a lot of moving parts to the DeMarcus Lawrence situation.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the draft, I mean, we're just shy a month away.
Yeah.
What positions are most important for the Cowboys?
Well, it's still defensive line. Robert Quinn trading for him would certainly help with that, but defensive line is still an area. What
they did with signing Hyder from the Lions, he'll play what they call the under tackle or the 3 technique. He'll play that on the outside shoulder. With with Christian Covington, who they signed from the Texans last week. He will play the nose tackle or the 1. So they've got the 1 and the 3 on the backup.
Okay.
So that will help there. But I don't think that keeps them from. I'm hearing still looking for defensive ends, still looking for safeties. So that's kind of why you have guys like Eric Berry come rolling in here. I don't think signing these guys on 1-year deals will keep them from drafting somebody.
Right.
I think that's the philosophy. I think people will say, "Oh, you got Jason Witten, you don't need a tight end."
No, you still need to. If you find one that you can develop, you draft him.
Especially while you got Jason Witten.
Exactly. It could be a bridge player to the. So the first thing Jason Witten said to me when he came back was, it wasn't, "Hey Brian, how's it going?" It was, "Hey, tight end class pretty deep, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So he knows. Yeah. He knows that the possibility. And again, the Cowboys lose Jeff Swaim, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they've got, with the young guys with Schultz and Jarwin and Witten, Rico Gathers somehow, maybe some way in the mix. I feel like that they'll probably move on from Rico Gathers. But this is a really, really deep, if you're following the draft, it's a very deep draft at tight end where there can be quality at 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round. Good opportunity.
And deep on defensive line this year for the most part.
Absolutely.
So that's lucky for the Cowboys because just like, every year, some positions are a little bit deeper than others. And so it just so happens that this year the areas that are deep are the areas where the Cowboys are looking to upgrade.
Wow. Well, Brian, I have one more question.
Sure.
Because I know you got to scoot.
Yeah.
Question from one of our viewers.
Okay.
Kay in Frisco, she wants to know, what are the odds of the Cowboys moving up to the first round of the draft?
Yeah, now moving up will require likely next year's the 2020 first. If you don't make a trade, say if you don't trade DeMarcus Lawrence, or you don't trade somebody that's going to could get you a first round pick in this draft. I think that next year's one is always a possibility. It's kind of hard to gauge. Generally, the draft will go on. You'll get down to a certain point. On a lot of teams' boards, they put their tags on the board, and maybe there's 32 teams, right? There'll be 32 picks in the first round. Well, you might only have 20 first-round grades on a board. You might only have 20 names. So that leaves 12 spots where Travis Frederick was a second-round player on their board that they took at 30. So sometimes you get past a certain point in the draft in the first round where somebody will say, okay, I'll take next year's one, and your 3 this year. So that's how you're going to have to kick next year's 1 to get back in, and then you'll be in the same spot again next year.
Okay.
And then you'll probably lose the 2, the 3, and 2 4s. Someone might make you kick one of those 4s back to them or kick a 3 to them. And if that's the case, then you're saying, okay, yeah, we're back in. We have no first round pick in 2020, and then we don't have a 3rd or 4th round pick in this draft. So it's kind of
wow.
People value when they look at their board, and they all of a sudden, if all the names are starting to get wiped out, and then they look up at their board and they're down to their 21st guy who's actually in the 2nd round. Teams might be willing to back out of that at that point in time. They might say, yeah, Dallas has a chance next year. You got a first place schedule. You play the Bears, the Rams, the Saints, the Patriots. Maybe that first round pick might be a top 10 pick next year. That's where now you have to judge.
Yeah, you're gambling. Wow. Yeah. You're projecting what you think.
And it happened to us. It happened to us in a draft when at Valley Ranch. And I'm trying to think of this. It was a Parcells draft. Might have been 2000. What draft did we draft Julius Jones?
04.
04. Julius Jones was a running back that we drafted.
04 sounds right.
Yeah. It was we traded out of the first round back in so we traded out. The Buffalo Bills wanted Lossman, the quarterback.
J.P. Lossman,
who's now a coach at the University of Florida.
Wow.
And J.P. Lossman, the Buffalo Bills coveted this quarterback from Tulane, and they kept calling. They kept calling.
Yeah,
we kept saying
they didn't have a pick right there to go get him.
Exactly.
They needed to move back up in the first round.
Yeah, we were at 21, I think, is where we at 20 or 21, somewhere right around there. And it just became all of a sudden like the Buffalo was very interested in that. They're trying to get back in, and we're like going, well, that might be a top 10 pick next year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That might be a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Because we think Buffalo's going to suck.
What happened? What happened? It ended up being the 20th pick. We're the team that sucked. We ended up drafting Ware. We ended up drafting DeMarcus Ware at 11, and then
Marcus Spears
with the Buffalo pick at 20. But we got out of there. We backed out of the round to take their next year one, thinking that it was going to be a top 10 pick, and actually we were the ones that sucked, and then got into the top 12, 11. Yeah.
What's so fascinating about the draft is you go in, you've got a plan, you said how you project, and once you're on the clock, who knows what's going to happen?
Well, it's like when you're playing poker or any kind of, you go up to the table and you know what's in your hand, but the cards are being dealt to everybody else, and you don't know what's in their hand and what their motivations are. Yeah. And you can't always predict what they're going to do.
That's right.
Right? And so that team needs a quarterback, or that team needs an offensive lineman. And so the guy that I had targeted, they're going to make a move.
What happens a lot of times nowadays is the security for general managers is very slim, except if you're the owner and the general manager, which we have here.
Yeah. But Jerry doesn't have to, sometimes Jerry, the general manager, doesn't have to worry about getting fired.
Sometimes you get general managers that are very aggressive. They're thinking, if I don't make this move, I could be done.
Yeah.
And so there'll be guys that will like Chrissy said, will just take everything, push all the chips to the middle of the table and say, that's the best I can do. And if it works, it works, and you save your job. If it doesn't work, well, then that's somebody else's problem next year.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, we could keep talking about this.
You got to leave a mess to clean up
all day. I love this. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it was a quick show today.
It was a quick show today.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's right.
Good questions. Right. Good questions. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll see you next time right here on 5 Points Blue.
This has been a production of 5 Points Blue, DallasCowboys.com, and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.